Hello and welcome. This is Cheryl. Thank you so much for joining me today. In this video, I'm going to create a variety of different Christmas gift tags and ornaments with dies. Some of these dies are ones that I've just gotten, and some are ones that I have had sitting here that I've been meaning to get to and I just haven't gotten to yet. So I thought I would do a huge session or a big session with these dies and create some different tags and ornaments. These are different things that could easily be put onto the front of a card, but since we're getting closer to Christmas, I typically like to do more gift tags or little ornaments, and I always love finding more uses for my dies, and being able to use these dies to create different tags and ornaments is a perfect way to use them and get more use out of them. This first die that I'm using here is the Trim a Tree die from Sizzix. It's a new one from this year, and I actually have just gotten it. I tried to resist, and then I just couldn't. So I'm cutting out some mixed media Heavystock here, and I am laying them all out. I'm going to spray them with some Distress Mica Spray stain. I'm using a variety of different colors from different sets, both this year and past years. I will have them all listed down in the description box below, the exact colors and what sets they are from. I like to mix and match, and I love the fact that there are so many different colors now that I'm creating all Christmas ornaments here, but I'm also using colors from some of the Halloween sets. They work perfectly with the Christmas sets. I'm going to do the tag in a variety of greens, and I thought I would do this tree in a variety of like grays and blues. I thought it would look really, really pretty. I always like doing things that have a little bit of non-traditional colors to them. I'm spraying them liberally with these mica stains. Now, if you've never used the mica stains before, they're a colored spray, but they have a mica shimmer to them, and the mica that's in them is colored. So all of these are like a gray-blue color, and the mica in them matches the color, and it's right in there. So I'm going to get a really nice shimmery look from here with both the tag and the tree. I'm spraying them liberally, and then I leave them overnight to completely dry. Because I used so much here, it's going to take a while for them to dry. I could use a heated tool to speed that up a little bit, but I knew I wanted to just get some other things done while I let them dry. So this is the next morning. They're all completely dried, but you can see that I've got a ton of the spray left on my mat, and I don't want that to go to waste. So I'm taking more pieces of Distress Heavystock. I've re-wet that Distress Mica Spray with Distress Sprayer that had water in it, and I'm just putting it all over my Heavystock. I'm going to let them aside to dry on their own, so I'm not going to speed it up and use a heated to dry them. Now, if I wanted to dry them, I could just use that heated tool and dry them completely. At this point, I thought I was going to be using them for future projects, but I actually used quite a few of them for the other tags that I'm going to create in this video. So I love the fact that you'll get to see a bunch of different uses for them. This black cardstock here is black mixed media Heavystock. It's perfect for using with wet mediums because it can handle it. You can also use it with alcohol inks. And when I say that, I mean you need to use it with alcohol pearls, or you need to use the inks with mixatives, because alcohol inks themselves are transparent. You wouldn't actually see them just using them on their own. So I have another piece of Distress Mixed Media Heavystock here. I wanted to do some in reds as well, but I didn't want to do it at the same time as I did the greens and the blues because I didn't want to accidentally get any red overspray here. Now, I absolutely love this media surface mat for creating. It's such a great surface to work on, but you'll see after I'm done all of these things that I've got quite a bit of staining on my mat. There's no way to avoid this really other than lifting things up and wiping them down as quickly as possible. But Tim said it right when he introduced it, it's going to stain, and it absolutely did. That's the only thing that I don't necessarily love about it, but I knew it was going to happen. And the reason I mention it is so that you know that it can happen, as well as the fact that for the rest of the video, you know that my mat is actually clean, it's just stained. So the Distress Mixed Media cardstock that I had sprayed with the red is already dried. It's to the side. I'm going to use it for a future ornament. I'm taking that same framed tags die that I used for the green Mica Spray piece, and I did one in white, and I am cutting one of those trees out of there. I wanted to do both the positive and the negative with these trees. So my blue tree is going to be the positive. This is going to be the negative. You're just going to see the green mica stain through that opening. And I'm also taking my tiny trimmer and cutting a little bit off of the side, so you see some of that around the side as well. I figured it was a nice way to frame that tag, and it's really easy to cut a little bit off. These framed tags put an embossed indent on the die cut, so I just followed those lines when I was cutting them off, so I knew I was going to have an even amount. The die cut from the die cutting out of that tag, I'm not using it for this video. I'll just save it with my dies and use it for a future project. Now that Trim-a-Tree die set has some really cute ornament dies with it that I'm going to use on my blue tree. On this tag die, or tag tree, I'm going to use some glitter champagne drops from Pink Fresh Studios. Just a different way of getting the look of ornaments on my tree, but I'm not using the ones that come with it. You could also use something like liquid pearls or tonic nouveau drops. That would work as well. Just a fun way to get some ornaments on there in a quick and easy way. And I wanted to show two different variations of different ways to do it. So I die cut a gold star while I was die cutting that white tag, or die cutting the tree out of the white tag. And I'm gluing that to the top there. I'm using some Barely Art glue to glue everything together. It's a nice liquid glue. I've got it in a fine tip bottle, and I really love how quickly it starts to grab whatever you are gluing down. So I'm using it to glue down these glitter drops as well. I only need a tiny little bit, and then I'm using my jewel picker in order to pick up those drops and put it down where I want it to. When you see me fiddling, it's because when I took those out of the package, some of them are upside down on my craft sheet, so I want to make sure that they're right side up so that I have the flat side on the tag and not the domed side on the tag. They're going to stick a lot better if I have the flat side right on the tag, as well as the fact that they sparkle so much nicer when you have them right way on your tag. So once I've done that first part where I have the glue, I just put the glue on the bottom part and I'm adding the glitter drops. I love the fact that these are in a bunch of different sizes, so I can add some variety to them and not have all uniform sizes all the way down the tree. And that's the same thing you can do with the Perfect Pearl or the liquid pearls or the Nouveau drops. You can have a variety of different sizes and just create some interesting texture that way. So while I let the glue dry for that, I'm going to assemble my blue tree here. These die cuts have some branches towards the bottom that are not completely die cut out. So I like to use my fingers just to twist them out or just to curve them out, just to give it a little bit of dimension. I love the fact that it is designed this way and you can create some really fun dimension with it. I'm using that same liquid glue in order to glue those pieces down. And I really love how when you layer them on top of each other, it creates a really nice textured and dimension element. So this would be perfect on the front of a card as well. You will want to do a larger card with this. I think I show it in the video at some point on a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 card, and you can see that it's a little bit too tall for this. So you'd want to do something more like a 5 by 7 card, or if you really had your heart set on a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card, you could just eliminate a couple of the bottom layers and make it a little bit shorter. I love how it looks with that mica stain on top of it, and because a bunch of colors were sprayed at once, they blended into each other beautifully. I'm taking the star and I'm actually just going to glue it in between a few of the layers there, so it's right in between them. The glue hadn't dried yet, so it was really easy to pull it off and just put it in between. So my star is done with some white glitter cardstock. You could also use metallic as well. I just wanted to use something that was going to pop a little bit from the blue and gray mica stain. I have the ornament pieces already die cut. I have the base layer in a matte silver cardstock, and then I have the over layer in a white glitter cardstock, the same white glitter cardstock that I used for the top of the stars. I had also die cut some glossy silver mirror card, but I decided not to use it with this. There was enough shimmer from the mica stains that I thought I would just leave it with the glitter ornaments, and I really like how it turned out. Because these pieces are so small, I'm using my tweezers and I'm holding them in there and then putting the liquid glue on there and then overlaying them onto the base of the ornament. Each one of these ornaments has 3 layers to it. I'm only using 2. I'm only using the base layer as well as the top layer. There's an inside layer that just eliminates the top part of the ornament, and I figured there wasn't going to be much lost if I didn't include that in there. I like the fact that there are 4 different ornaments here. There are circles in 2 different sizes, and then whatever that shape is in 2 different sizes as well. It's got a little bit of a point to the bottom of it. I'm trying to keep some of the smaller ones to the top of the tree and then mixing them in the middle of the tree and then the larger ones to the bottom of the tree. There's a few spots where I stray away from that, but I wanted to keep most of the smaller ones to the top. And at one point I do swap ornaments just because I would have had 3 of the same ones really close to each other and I didn't like that. Really easy, once again, to put these on the tree. I'm using those same tweezers. These are reverse grip tweezers. So when I squeeze them, they open. When I'm not squeezing them, they are closed. So it's perfect if I happen to, say, drop my tweezers or if I want to swap them between hands. I don't need to make sure that I'm still squeezing them closed because they automatically are closed when I'm not squeezing them. So I highly recommend having tweezers like these. They're very, very handy to have, and I use mine nearly constantly, really. I've had these for so many years. They used to have cushion grips on the squeeze part of the tweezers, and they've fallen off. So they last a very, very long time. Yeah, here's where I have that piece right on a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card, and you can see that it's too tall for it. So if you wanted to make a card that was that size, you would definitely want to eliminate a layer, but the whole thing itself is just beautiful and I think would look gorgeous on a 5x7 card. So I have a loop here that I made from some silver cord. I'm just gluing that to the back and then I'm setting that aside to dry, and I will work on the next ornament. The next ornament is using the Candle Shop colorized die set from Sizzix. This is another brand new one, and once again, I had just gotten it and I haven't used it yet. I'm going to do the medium-sized candle for this tag. Actually, I'm making a tag here. And I have a bunch of different cardstock scraps as well as some of those mica sprayed cardstocks. So on the top right there is the mica sprayed distress mixed media heavy stock. The one right to the left of it is the one where I was picking up some of the excess. So that one has a variation of color to it, and it has a little bit of mica shimmer, but not as much as the ones where I sprayed the mica stain. When I die cut all of these pieces, I will typically pick all of my cardstock pieces, lay them in order, and then I will die cut them. And I usually leave the die with that die cut until I'm gluing those pieces together so that I can easily see exactly which layer goes where. I love the fact that these dies have right on them the number order. So it'll say candle B, and then it will say 1, candle B2, so you know exactly what order they go into. It's quite easy to tell just by looking at them because each one gets progressively smaller, but if you have any guesses to it, it tells you right on the back of the die. So there's very little guesswork to them. The other thing that's cool about them is when you die cut them, they put a little indent line where the next layer is about to go, so you can easily see where that next layer goes. Again, leaving very little guesswork to it and making it easy to layer up. I like using a liquid glue with these because you have room to move things and shimmy things in place. It makes them very easy to layer together and to make sure that they're properly placed. The flame for this candle, I used some holographic gold cardstock, and it's really, really pretty. I love how it catches the light, and I figured it was perfect for the flame part. Because of all the different layers that you use when you're creating with these colorized dies, they really have a lot of texture and dimension to them. And they're a really easy way to get a unique die cut look for your creations. Now, any of these pieces that I'm using to create tags with can also easily be used for card fronts. This candle shop die set also has a base tray or a candle holder that you could easily put this into. For this tag, I decided not to use that piece, but it's easy enough to do that and add it if you wanted something at the bottom of it. You could also take this die and use some greenery dies and add that to the bottom as well, and that would look really, really pretty as a way to kind of finish it off, adding more texture and dimension to it. These tweezers also make it really easy to place these die cuts, as well as that liquid glue with that fine tip. You can see some of these die cuts as I'm progressing get really, really fine and intricate, and having a glue bottle that has a really fine tip with it makes it really easy to get enough glue on there, but not too much. You can see that by leaving these pieces in the die set, it makes it easy to know exactly where they go as well as what layer they're from. If I were to layer these all together or put them all in the same pile, it would get to a point where it'd be harder to figure out what they're from. Now that I have all of those layers glued together, I just put an acrylic block on the top of them and set it aside to dry. I'm using some black cardstock here to put my candle on, and I want to give that flame a little bit of a glow. So I have an Oxide pad here. I'm using scattered straw, and you can see how it gives a really pretty glow to that background. I wanted that to be a little bit brighter, so I went and grabbed some squeezed lemonade just to brighten that up a tiny little bit. And when I go to lay that candle die on top of there, you can see that it gives the flame the look of a nice glow behind it. So I'm going to use that same liquid glue to glue that onto the front of the tag. So this is also a framed tag from that set. It's just a smaller size than the one that I used for the tree. I have a gold Sharpie that I went and I added some gold accents to the outside of that tag. I screwed up when I was filming it, but you'll see that later on. I'll use the silver one for a different tag. So I'm on to the next set of tags here. I'm using the Festive Ornaments die set from Spellbinders, and I was going to do the one with the little Christmas lights here, but I decided to do the Santa belt one as well as the one with the holly. I'm using that black mixed media cardstock with the mica stain on it that I created earlier for the base of one of them. And then I'm also using the red mica stained mixed media Heavystock for the second one. It's just going to give it some really nice shimmer. I have some scraps of cardstock here that I did that second die cut out of to create a back part of the tag. So this is going to be kind of like a tag that has a little bit of a card feel to it. So you can easily write on the inside of the tag. You could write on the back of the tag, but this just makes it a little bit different. So I have that there. I scored the top part of it, and I'm only going to put glue on the top part of that cardstock piece so that I have an open flap to write in. Now the holly and berries are very easy to put together. There's a clump of 3 berries and then a single berry. They just get layered right on top of each other, and it's really easy to see exactly where they go. These were cut out of the berries were cut out of the mica paper or this Mica Spray paper, and the holly was cut out of one of the extra pieces where I was packing up or taking up some of the extra spray that was on my mat. So it has a little bit of color, but a little bit of shimmer as well. For the Santa belt, I used some holographic gold cardstock for the belt or for the buckle. And then for the belt itself, I have some beautiful velvet cardstock that has some adhesive onto the back of it. And I use that adhesive to glue it on. It's a really, really simple design, but I think it's absolutely cute. And it's a nice, easy, simple, quick way to create a tag that's personalized for a gift. I'm using that same gold holographic paper for the little hangy part of the ornament, and then I'm gluing that holly right on top. I put acrylic blocks on top of there just to hold everything down and in place while it's drying. And then my last step is I'm using some glossy accents for on top of the berries as well as the belt buckle. This is just going to give it some really nice shine as well as a bit of dimension and just a different texture from the rest of what is on that ornament. I like to use the glossy accents in a fine tip bottle so that I can get really precise with it. The one thing to be sure of if you've never used glossy accents before, if you happen to get a bubble, use a pin to pop it while it's still wet. If you don't pop it, it'll just dry right in there, and it's very easy to get rid of it while it's still wet. I ended up using just a toothpick because it was the first thing I found, and that worked just as well. Once you have the glossy accents on there, you can just set it aside on a flat surface to dry. You don't want to tilt this in any way, otherwise you're going to have an area that's thicker and an area that's thinner, because while it's wet, it will just flow down. Before putting your glossy accents away, make sure that metal tip is nice and clear, and that way you won't have a clogged tip next time. The last or the next ornament that I'm doing is the Winter Welcome sled die. I'm actually going to create a tag out of this. I die cut everything off screen. I'm using some silver mirror cardstock for the base of the sled, and I have a Brutus Monroe stick and stamp mat. I'm using that to hold the pieces down while I'm gluing them. Because there's a lot of pieces here and it's mostly being glued down to that mirror cardstock, often that mirror cardstock, because it's coated, it takes a little bit longer to dry. So by having everything down on this stick and stamp mat for the process, it's going to make it a little bit easier and help a bit. You'll see that my hand gets stuck a little bit on the mat every once in a while and shifts it, but that's okay. It comes off fairly easily. It's just a nice way to hold everything down without having to put an acrylic block on each piece to let it dry before adding the next piece. I'm using the front of the packaging to know exactly where these pieces from the sled go. I created a card with a Sizzix sled die, and it was really easy to see exactly where the next pieces go. This one, it wasn't quite as easy without looking at the front of the package, but it still creates a gorgeous sled die. And the main reason, even though I have the Sizzix one, that I got this one is I love these ice skates. I love that little detail, and they could be added to anything. I think it would be really cute to do like a wreath and have some ice skates hanging down as well. But for this first version of what I make with this die, I wanted to have the sled with those skates, and I thought it would make a really nice Christmas tag. So I've got everything here glued down. I'm putting the silver part, or the silver mirror skate bottoms on the gray parts of the skate. That silver mirror cardstock is the same mirror that I'm using for the base of the sled, so that's going to tie in quite nicely. And you'll see every time I add a layer, I put an acrylic block on the previous one just to hold it down. That way I don't have to hold things down for a few minutes while I'm waiting for that glue to just start to grab and hold. It does it fairly quickly, but it's always nice to have free hands and be able to do other things while waiting for glue to dry. While I'm waiting for those skates to dry a little bit, I'm going to glue my poinsettia together. I like to use my fingers to curl those petals just to give them a little bit more dimension. It makes it less flat, and I just really like the way it looks. I also use my die pick to hold that center down just to make sure that glue has some nice contact. This center part of the poinsettia is done with some matte gold cardstock, and the die for the center has kind of like a starburst die, and then it's got some little tiny circle berry pieces. For those little circle berry looking pieces, they're not actually berries, I put just a little bit of glue in the center of that piece, and then I'm using my jewel picker in order to pick up those pieces and put them in the glue. That glue is strong enough to grab those little die cut pieces off of that jewel picker, but it makes it easier than having to try to do this with tweezers and then getting glue on my tweezers. Now that those skates are dried enough, I'm putting them onto the little strings or the little laces, gluing those together, and then putting that acrylic block and letting that sit for a moment. Once that has held on, I'll put a little bit of glue between the skates to hold them together. Here I'm using the silver Sharpie marker. Now these are brand new, so there's no ink in the tips. In order to get that ink flowing, you want to shake it. There's a metal ball in here. Make sure to mix everything first and then tap it onto some scrap paper, and after a little bit, that ink will start to flow. To ink the edges, I'm working on some scrap paper, and I'm basically drawing a line on the side of that cardstock. Most of my tip is on the scrap paper, and the side of the marker is on that tag. So you're going to get just a really nice fine outline. It's a really subtle look, but it's a great way to frame things on there. This sled can be added to that tag in any way you want. I'm putting it on a little bit of a slant. I took that piece of mixed media paper that I had some of the blue and green Mica Spray excess on. It would be really cute on that as well, but I thought it popped a little bit better on a white tag. Originally, when I had this idea in my head, I was going to put it on that piece of mixed media cardstock, but once I saw it on white, I thought it looked a lot nicer on there, a little bit more clean, and I used some of the mixed media cardstock that has the blue and green sprays on it to cut out some of those pine greenery pieces. While I'm waiting for that sled to dry on the tag, I just have that acrylic block holding it down, and I like to use that time to kind of figure out how I'm arranging my pieces. I'll put them on the acrylic block, and then when I lift everything off to the side, I don't have to remember where everything goes. I kind of see exactly where it is. Likely I'll change things up, and I usually do, but it just gives me an idea where I had everything placed. And that way I don't have to remember or don't have to take a picture with a different phone or something to use that as my layout guide or whatever. Easy thing to do. And because I have that acrylic block on there anyways, I might as well have a 2-for-1. I use that same liquid glue to glue those greenery bits down. And you can see that I basically only put glue on the base part of the stem. When these greenery pieces get glued down, they flip up a little bit, and I just like the dimension it gives. I don't worry about having everything glued down perfectly and having every little bit glued down. I like the look of it. If it makes you feel better, you can put glue on the entire thing and glue it all down. Once all of that greenery is in place, I put some glisten stickles in the center. Stickles are a nice glitter glue with a fine tip, and this one just has a gold glitter in it. It's transparent, but it has a nice, pretty look to it. I put some silver cord in the top of that tag just to tie everything off. Now, this was a bonus one that I kind of had the idea of towards the end of this project. I'm using several of the different dies here. I'm using some nesting circle dies as well as the candle die, but this time I'm using the smallest of the candles. I'm using the greenery from that sled die, and I'm just putting it all together, and I really like how this looks all together. It kind of looks a little bit snow globe-ish. For that holographic cardstock that I've been using throughout, I'm using 2 nesting circle dies just to create a circle outline, and then I'm also using that same cardstock for the hanging part of the tag, and that hanging part from that tag is from those Festive Ornament dies. I like the size of it. It works perfectly for this particular one. I also used the largest of the nesting circle dies to die cut a base. That base that I'm using is one of those mixed media cardstocks that have the green and the blue Mica Spray overspray on it. And I also used the larger of the 2 circles to die cut out of some clear Duralar. So Duralar is a clear acrylic or acetate plastic, and it die cuts somewhat well, but I did have to take my scissors and cut some of those pieces out that didn't want to die cut. I could have put some cardstock on underneath there to help it a little bit, but I just figured it's easy enough to grab the scissors and die cut that. I put the gold rim around that, put my acrylic block on there to hold that in place. That small candle I put in the center of the ornament, and now I am gluing the acetate piece to the front of it. I used an embossing powder tool on both sides just to help with static a little bit and to eliminate any little bits and pieces that might want to stick on the inside, just making it a little bit more clear. Once I put that liquid glue and the ornament holder on there, I'm going to put my acrylic block on there to hold that in place again and let that dry. Because I'm using Duralar and it's not porous, it's going to take a little bit longer for that glue to start holding and for that to dry. But I really like how it looked. I put this mixed media piece on the back here so it's opaque, but you could just leave it with the Duralar and have it transparent and hang it on a tree and have, say, a light behind it. I think that would look really, really pretty too. I just wanted to use that piece of mixed media cardstock with the mica sprays that I had already had created. Some of the other extra pieces there I used to die cut that greenery, and then I also used some of the excess of the red mica sprayed mixed media Heavystock for the poinsettia. Just a different way of using more of those scraps and getting those used up rather than saving them for a future project. I put that greenery on the base of the candle, but I think it would also look really nice on the top of the ornament and having that kind of hang down. Either way would work perfect. The very last step is adding some gold cord to the top of the ornament, and then this piece is totally done. Thank you so much for joining me for this. I hope you enjoyed this. Each one of these could also be easily turned into a card. I wanted to create some tags and ornaments just because of the time of year, but it would be easy enough to add those to the front of a card using the same or similar techniques. It's always fun to have many ways to use the dies that we have, and I always like to create ornaments and tags at this time of year. It's just a fun way to create, but do smaller projects and be able to hand those out and give those to the ones that you love with the gifts that you've gotten them. Thank you so very much for joining me for this. I hope you enjoyed and found some inspiration in creating with your dies in a little bit of a different way. I really appreciate you being here. If you happen to have a favorite of what was created today, post it in the comments. I'm really curious what you guys loved. I hope you have happy holidays and have a little bit of time to create in the meantime.